Welcome into Overtime, presented by McDonald's. Dewey, Dailey, along with John Bruce. For today's episode, it's Playoff 30 here in Southern Ohio as we've wrapped up the regular season with Week 10 last Friday. Some of the teams, well, actually a lot of our area teams with the 16-team playoff format now. Moving on to Week 11, we're going to talk sort of a vague overview, everybody that made it, and then hopefully next for any of the teams, because we have some matchups like the one we'll talk about with Gallia and Benton County a little later where it's two area teams playing, but for the most part it's a lot of area teams playing teams that we don't typically cover, so hopefully we have a lot of teams move on. Then we'll start off by talking about a couple of games from the previous week, and then we'll preview two playoff games, mostly just because those are kind of the main two that we think could be the most competitive out of the ones that have two area teams on both sides of the matchup.
Yeah, so it should be fun. Playoffs are always fun. I know some people griping about more teams getting in, which is whatever. Now the only thing I'll gripe about is the fact that tickets are not cheap. So that part is,
how much are they? Like $10?
I think 12 for adults ahead of time, 9 for students ahead of time. But if you go at the gate, it's 15. Like,
I could get into a Reds game for less than that.
Yeah, like I get that some people don't want to put their card on stuff, and I get it. But so at least they have the gate option. It's just way more expensive.
So like obviously they would get to keep concessions, but like for ticket sales, does the hosting school, does the OHSAA get all that? Mm-hmm. All right, well, make sure you watch our live stream.
Yeah, so I think they get money to pay the workers. So like if you have 2 ticket takers, you can pay those ticket takers
$50 a game.
Yeah,
or whatever.
So whatever the game price is. So yeah, OHSAA makes off like bandits on this. So it is what it is. But it's pretty cool. Like I know. So I watched I rode the wave, watching the Westfall kids. And the Westfall kids, you could just tell, like, they were winning on senior night, but also you could just tell how excited they were because you could tell they had that feeling that they're getting ready to make the playoffs. So, and like they needed a little bit of help, and they got that help. And so, we'll talk about them a little bit later. But for the most part, we only had a couple teams that kind of squeaked in. For the most part, the teams were pretty comfortably in, and should be a really fun Week 11.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll start off by talking about a couple games from Week 10. One of them, our live stream of the week, it was Zane Trace and Paint Valley, the battle for second place or potentially a share, but Unioto was able to take care of business over in Londonderry.
Nope. Chillicothe.
No.
I got yelled at.
I don't care.
It's so much closer to Londonderry.
It's close enough.
Yeah, I bowed into the pressure. But that was Coconut Wall Pop. I'm not Coconut Wall Pop anymore, so I don't have to bow to that pressure.
Not even Zeke T. Plummer anymore.
Yeah, I'm Jay Bruce. I hate it so much.
But
it's changing next summer.
Unioto was able to get the win at Southeastern to win it outright. So this game was for second place in the league. And I tell you, if you watched about the first 4 minutes of the game, you would have thought it would have been a lot wider than a 3-point final. But Zane Trace wins 34-31 in. I don't think it rained enough to call it a monsoon.
No, but it was annoying.
It was a windy, relatively rainy night, and not a great night to be on top of the press box without a tent that Ohio Health gave you.
So if you watched episode 21, you might have saw it was a little foggy at the beginning, and I think it was still the camera working itself out from the game the other night. But yeah, if you'd watched the first 4 minutes of the game, if you watched the first 4 minutes of the second half, you also wouldn't have thought it was going to be close, as Paint Valley
struggled in the first
was not very good in special teams.
No, the first 5 minutes of each half, Paint Valley, if you took away probably the first 4 to 5 minutes of each half, they'd probably win the game.
Well, they were down 27-0. Right. Yeah. So opening kickoff, Zane Trace kind of pooched it a little bit.
Mortar kick to the other side.
And Paint Valley did not fair catch it, and
they muffed it.
Yeah, and muffed it, and kind of paid the price for not fair catching it. And Zane Trace recovered. They went down and scored a few minutes later because they're not really the quick strike type offense. So they score. I believe that was a Langley touchdown on that.
Yep, first one.
Yeah, and then Judah Hanks actually missed his first extra point of the season.
Which I did not jinx.
You didn't jinx it?
I
Okay.
did not
I assumed
say-
you did because you
Nope.
asked right before what he was.
No, I saved it because not last week, but at Unioda before he kicked every time, I mentioned how he was perfect every time. Now, he made every one.
Yeah.
Now, this week, I knew he was perfect. I didn't say anything, but as soon as he missed it, that was the first thing that came
Yes.
out. I was like, he missed his first PAT. Now, he made the rest of them, which really ended up being the difference in the game was point after touchdowns. So.
Yeah, being able to kick extra points is pretty big, and he did a good job bouncing back from that first one. And I think that was a good bit of wind aided, but he drove those next ones
Well, yeah,
through.
and you could tell it had a lot of spin on it, so he probably didn't hit it as good as he typically does.
Yeah.
But I mean, the wind, he was kicking into the wind. It definitely didn't help at all.
Yeah. So Zane Trace goes up 6-0. Paint Valley on their first play from scrimmage fumbles, which Zane Trace picks up, and they score a couple plays later to go up 13-0.
And this is in like the first 4 minutes of
Yeah.
the game.
Then Paint Valley starts to drive a little bit and fumbles again. But I think it was the second play after Carson Free picked off a pass.
Returned it to like the 12-yard
Yeah,
line.
and then Braylon Robertson scored on the next play. Made it 13-7. After a Zane Trace punt, Robertson's, or is it Fauber? I think Fauber might have scored the second touchdown.
I
But
don't remember exactly. I know they both had a couple of rushing
yeah,
scores.
so
Robertson, I think, had four.
he had
four.
3 and Fauber had 2. Yeah, so Fauber scored to make it 13-13 because they missed the extra point, which is huge in retrospect because of what ended up happening in the second half. But Zane Trace scores a little bit before the half. That was also a Langley score. The second score was a Blake Phillips score. Made it 20-13 at the half. Then coming out of the half, after a steady rain during the halftime, Zane Trace goes down on their opening drive and scores another Carter Langley score on that. Made it 27-13, and then Paint Valley muffed another.
I wouldn't even call it a muff. Just
didn't.
They kicked it into no man's land, and everybody was kind of waiting on somebody else to get after it. And nobody got on top of it, and I don't know who it was, but it was the gunner to the far side. Just ran in, and I know it did bounce around a little bit, but I think Zane Trace was first to it and eventually got on top of it.
Because they had been kicking to the same spot, and they kicked it to the opposite.
Well,
so I think
it's because it was Wheaton down there, and they moved free. They moved Wheaton up a little, and then they moved free, not into the exact spot, but in that area. And they're like, okay, well, we're just kicking to the other side.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. And they have Harrington, who only does kickoff, so he's able to place it right where he needs to, and stole a possession.
Yeah, and then Zane Trace goes down and scores again. This one was a Blake Phillips score, so it's a 34-13 game. Felt like it might have been over at that point, but Paint Valley came back with kind of a vengeance. As Braylon Robertson scored to make it 34-19, and then they went for 2 and was not successful. Now there's some new math that goes into it. I think with down 3 scores is a little early on it. What I've seen is 2 when you're down 2 scores is when you go for 2. But let's say they get it, then they're up a point more or less on their scoring. So I do get it to an extent, but they're able to score again on a Fauber run, like a long Preston Fauber run. They went for 2 again and did not get it. So it's 34-25. Ultimately, they would get the ball back one more time with Braylon Robertson scoring. Once again, went for 2 and didn't get it. So it made it 34-31. After the onside kick was recovered by Cohen Larson for Zane Trace, Blake Phillips went into the Wildcat and was able to run out the clock for the Pioneers for a 34-31 win. Pretty rainy night. Five turnovers for Paint Valley. So really, you take away the turnovers, which you can't do. And you take away those first 4 minutes of each half, which once again you can't really do. And Paint Valley was in really good shape in the game, but overall it was a good senior night win for Zane Trace. Give them some momentum and get them a possibility of 2 home games in the playoffs. Definitely got them one.
Take care of business in week 11 and get another one week 12.
Yeah. So congratulations to the Pioneers for that win. They started off the year 0-2 and then had to really battle for that Week 3 win over North Union. And after that, they just kind of, they finished 7-3 on the season. And it's not like their first 2 losses were to scrubby teams, as you lose to Logan Elm, who MSL champion, Logan Elm. Yeah, and then also lost to a good Waverly team as well. So, they stepped up their non-league schedule and kind of paid off for them for a second place finish and a number 4 seed in the tournament playoffs.
So, yep. And just one other game, the Battle of Washington Courthouse is Miami Trace and Courthouse played. It was at Miami Trace. This one was last year. Washington Courthouse actually took this one, and then the year before was Miami Trace. So they've been back and forth the past couple years. Miami Trace takes it 21-14. Miami Trace led 14-7 after the first quarter. Then Courthouse tied it up 14-14 going into the half. Both teams scoreless in the third. Miami Trace wins the fourth 7-0 to take the final. I saw they do actually have a trophy. I saw the picture, and it's one of those just that has a gold football on top, and then they have a bunch of plaques on them. I'm assuming they just update the score every year. So it's always, trophy games are so cool.
I love it.
It's a great way to, and I really don't think a rivalry like this even needs one, just because it's going to be highly regarded anyway, but that just makes it that much better.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Did you ever see the trophy for the Union Adina game?
Football?
Yeah.
I didn't know there was one. I'm assuming there's not anymore.
I think the trophy might have got thrown out because it looked so bad the last time I saw it.
Yeah.
It looked so bad. But yeah, there was one for a long time.
Was it just like a gold football on top of a?
I don't even know what it was. It looked like a wire almost the last time I saw it.
Because
it looked like it got dropped a lot.
Really, all it takes is just 1 year a team that wins just like goes and buys a trophy and they just throw a little number on it and it just becomes a tradition.
The civil conflict between UCF and UConn, where the UConn...
That's a rivalry?
No.
I was going to say that
UConn's coach was like, we're going to play this as a rivalry. And UCF was like, nah, we're good. Just didn't do it.
But in the game, Trey Robinette, 3 passing touchdowns caught by Garrett Guess, who I believe this was his first game back. He had been out for, I think, 3 or 4 weeks, was dealing with a lower body injury. And then Asher LeBeau, one of the players you said to watch out for in the preseason, had a receiving touchdown, and Evan Mullet had the other for the Panthers. Then for Washington Courthouse, Mason Kaufman, 2 passing touchdowns, Rocky Jones with 1, and then Isaac Hood with the other. Pretty competitive. It's a lot closer than I thought. These teams have been, at least for me, a little weird. Not weird, but a little tough to get a grasp on, because it's like Courthouse has had some really odd and tough losses.
Yeah.
And the same can be said, Miami Trace beat Waverly week 1, and I'm thinking this is a team that could even give Jackson a run for their money in the FAC, but I think I just kind of got caught up in the moment, forgot how good Jackson was. But really just the FAC as a whole, because I know it's not a game we're directly talking about, but Hillsborough and McLean, I figured Hillsborough would probably win that. McLean dominated the whole game.
Yeah, it was 21-0, ends up being 21-13. But, that was, the FAC outside of Jackson was kind of weird. Because, Chillicothe didn't win a league game, but played, some really close games. And
came down to the wire with the Hillsborough team that we've held pretty highly throughout the year.
Yeah, so definitely a strange league. I do think that maybe Washington could be the strangest team that we have in our area as far as overall results. But Marion Franklin's a pretty decent team out of the Columbus City League. They beat them 42-6. They really put it on teams weeks 2 through 4, and then that Monroe game. Monroe goes 2-8. Outscores them by 28 points in the fourth quarter. Yeah. And it was just kind of it kind of seemed to turn their season. Then they go to McLean and put it on them, and they're back. And, gave themselves a chance to host a playoff game, but ends up a couple interceptions late by Miami Trace, ends up putting that game away. But now they get to go to the fun house, Wyoming. Yeah.
Yeah, it nearly for a second there. It was looking like Waverly might get Wyoming for the second
Yeah.
straight. Yeah, it's definitely. Teams around here don't have the greatest track record against
Yeah.
Cincinnati,
I just
Wyoming.
remember walking in with my brother. It was the first ever playoff game for Union, and like we knew we weren't going to win.
Well, that kid went to like Northwestern
Yeah.
or something, didn't he? I don't remember his name or if
Yeah.
he played, but
But yeah, like we walk in and like they're stretching, and like they're so big. Just where we were walking, and we're like, oh, that's not good. And then overthrew a pass in the first drive that might have been a touchdown, and then after that, it took like another quarter to get a first down. So it was very impressive.
So in the FAC, Jackson wins at 5-0. Hillsborough and Miami Trace tied at second, 3-2 each, but technically Hillsborough gets second just based on the tiebreaker. Washington Courthouse and McLean both finished 2 and 3. I think Courthouse beat McLean, so they would get the tiebreaker for fourth, and then Chillicothe goes 0 and 5. Did have the one win.
Have you
Logan.
seen the Chillicothe kid, the 8th grader, on film? Oh my gosh.
They got a monster coming up.
Oh yeah, I don't think they're going to be down real long. So
we like to see.
yeah, and like Coach Bart does a good job overall there. And once everything gets settled, I think they'll be in good shape. But yeah, they had some defectors for this year and had a lot of injuries. So not the ideal season for the Cavaliers, but we'll see. I'm sure they'll bounce back more quickly than not. So.
And then just before, I know it's not one we had previously talked about discussing, but just before we jump into the playoff previews, I did want to talk about Logan Elm taking down Hamilton Township. Now, for Logan Elm, that has been one of, well, eventually, after week 10, it's become one of the most difficult teams for me to grasp because early on, I wasn't that bought in, and then I was, and then after they lost to Bloom Carroll, I was like, man, like even going into the, like we kind of discussed streaming the Hamilton game, but it's like Hamilton just controlled Bloom Carroll, who took care of Logan Elm pretty easily. Like, I don't want to go there, and then Logan Elm just takes care of business in week 10. And I feel like we almost kind of joked. It's like, oh yeah, if Logan Elm beats Hamilton, it'd be a 3-way tie, but that's not going to happen. But man,
yeah, so
just for Logan Elm, just a ton of momentum now going into the playoffs.
Yeah, so Hamilton, like, I don't know, like, they were 11-point favorites, going into the game. And I didn't know if it was going to be that close. I know, like, we didn't get our picks posted this week, but the ones that we saw in the group, everybody took Hamilton, and it wasn't to slight Logan Elm. It was just really impressive by Hamilton. And Logan Elm took them behind the woodshed, like 28-0.
Yeah.
Like, that's a Hamilton Township team that was scoring 45 points a game, and they shut them out with the league championship on the line.
Like, if you told me the score was 28-0, but didn't tell me who won, I'd been like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you tell me Logan Elm won. What?
Yeah.
How?
I was giving you, like, slight updates during the game, and your face was like...
Because it's just not something... Because Hamilton beat Bloom Carroll by what? 3?
Yeah.
3. And then Bloom Carroll beat Logan Elm at home.
By 20,
what was it? The
29.
It
was 35-6.
Right. I mean, Bloom Carroll didn't even attempt to pass in the second half just simply because they didn't have to.
Yeah.
So... I don't know. Good job, Logan. I shocked me, and you'll see that in the power. I know I dropped them a little lower than I probably should have, but they jump way back up into the power rankings, and able to grab a share of a 3-way share. You don't see 3-way shares all that often, but little 3-way share in the MSL.
Yeah. So I don't know how much you guys pay attention to the Fantastic 50 stuff, but like they do the weekly ranking for the teams. Their points jumped from 125.4, which I don't know what all goes into that, but to 133.6 after that one game. They jumped from 217th in the state to 171.
Yeah.
And they went from not having a chance in the championship probabilities to having a chance to win a regional, and the computer has them have a chance to win a state championship because of
just that one win.
Just that one win with how impressive that was, and they didn't look particularly good the week before against Tays Valley. Mm-hmm. So that's, to me, was the bigger thing there. So really, kudos to Logan Elm, man. That's just
and I think they were in a spot, especially after the Bloom Carroll game, where a lot of teams would just kind of like, we're done.
We'll get ready for the playoffs.
Yeah, just kind of chalk it up. But No, they stayed the course and, got to share the title. So, it's I don't know. Week 10 was weird. There were a lot of, like I talked about the Hillsborough McLean game. That was one I didn't expect, and this one was no different, especially to that magnitude, 28-0. That's
There was I saw a tweet or an X tweet from a fellow in Central Ohio was talking about how weird it was up there. They had like 7 teams lose their first game in Week 10.
Well, I saw Cincinnati, Wyoming. I don't think it was last week, but
it was week
9. Cincinnati, Wyoming lost their first league game, and what was it?
They lost their first regular season game in over 7 years.
Yeah, that's crazy. I was going to try to, courtesy of the Sporting Pumpkin, check a quick box score for that game. Passing, Aaron Walters was, I'm assuming 6 of 10 for 132 yards. That they've got it organized. Sort of weird. No passing touchdowns, however. Rushing for Logan Elm, Michael Bach had 50 yards on 12 carries. Landon Thompson had 197 yards on 28 carries. They don't have touchdowns listed, but I can just tell you right now, Landon Thompson had a 40-yard touchdown run, and then Walters had a 33-yard passing touchdown to Michael Bach, who I believe is actually their, at least on their depth chart, listed as their second running back.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's how my chart had it. And then Landon Thompson had rushing touchdowns of 4 and 7 yards. So for Thompson, 197 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. Walters had the 1 passing touchdown to Bach. I mean, I don't know. That game was just wild to me. I'm surprised. I think it's fair to say I'm surprised.
Yeah.
And just harping on it again, just based on what Hamilton did. I think that game was at Hamilton against Bloom Carroll, so you can factor that in a little if you want to. But I know my dad has said it a couple times. It might be fair to say Bloom Carroll is probably, I would say, the best looking team we've seen on live stream this year. And we've seen a lot of great teams, so that says a lot about them. And really now that says a lot about Logan Elm, too.
Yeah. It was just like, maybe we just caught Logan Elm on a bad night because I did not expect that at all. So very impressive for the Indians to be able to win the league. Braves.
Wow. There you go.
Man, I just blanked. I'm not that far off. But, really impressive for the Braves to be able to win the league after it seemed like all was lost after week 7.
All right, so we'll look now just quickly at all the area teams in each division. There are a lot of them. So we'll start with Division 3, which is probably tied for Division 7 with the least amount of schools, as a majority of ours are D4, 5, and 6, mostly D4 and 5. But for Division 3, Jackson going to get a home game against Marietta, Bloom Carroll, and Athens. That game's at Bloom Carroll. Then Miami Trace draws the 9. They're at Hamilton Township, who we just talked about, who maybe isn't as good as maybe we thought they were. So chance there for Miami Trace. And then Hillsborough draws the 11 seed at Salina, which I have never heard of.
Salina.
Oh, maybe we did.
Yeah, we talked about it last week because of how ridiculous of a drive it would be. And then it turned out like they lost, so I didn't think it was going to happen. And then now they still have to play them.
Yeah, so games there. I mean, obviously going to expect Jackson to probably win a couple of games in the playoffs. Definitely week 11. We'll see what happens and who they draw in week 12. For Bloom Carroll and Athens, definitely expecting Bloom Carroll to win. As I think Athens was around 4-6 or 5-5 on the year.
They ended up beating Nelsonville last week. So
I forgot about that. Yeah, it was like 19-13.
Yeah, that would have pulled me tied with Brock.
Yeah, because we were talking about that in the SOSA chat. Like, man, a week ago, Nelsonville York was playing for the TVC title, and then they lose to Athens. So Athens maybe a lot better than what their record shows.
Yeah, it seemed like they kind of came along throughout the year and got a little bit better, and that's kind of the most important thing.
Well, they had that miraculous win against Logan a little earlier on too, so I think a better year than their record shows for Athens. Then Miami Trace They're the 9, so as close as the seedings can
Right.
get, with Hamilton as an 8 seed. So I think that'll be an interesting game to look at, just to see kind of how the FAC and MSL match up. Although, we saw a team like Logan Elm, as you said earlier, take Miami Trace more or less behind the shed. So I think that one will be a very interesting match to watch. And then, Hillsborough draws the 11, but they have. I don't want to say they've overperformed, but I would say when you look at their preseason expectations, that would be fair to say.
Yeah, I think.
Now at this point, I'm sort of expecting them to perform a little better than an 11 seed, but we'll see. Right? They've got one of the best backfield duos in our coverage area. I mean, a lot of teams, it's just one guy they lean on. Now they do lean on they do lean on Barrett fairly heavily, but you still have Hostel, right? So,
Yes.
I mean, we'll see. Should be. I think, what did we say? It was like a 90-minute drive to Salina, something like that.
Yeah, it wasn't as
as
far as I thought, because I thought it was like a really lengthy drive. But I think that was because whenever I was doing it,
2:15.
I was driving from Chillicothe to Fairborn and then getting up to Salina from there. But Salina, beautiful part of the state.
So Division 4, Unioda will host Urbana. And then Logan Elm draws the 4 seed. They'll have 2 home games if they can beat Indian Valley in Week 11. Gallia Academy and Vinton County is the 7 and 10 seeds. That looks like that'll be our live stream in Week 11. I've talked to their AD, Adam Clark, already, so he hooked us up with that Washington Courthouse basketball game over the winter, so I'd already had his contact info, and as of now, it looks like we're good to go to watch the Devils and Vikings. Some interesting mascots. I know we've talked about it a lot, but I always like how Gallia has the Devils and the Angels. That's pretty cool. And then just a couple other teams. Waverly draws the 11. They're at Springfield, Shawnee, and then Courthouse is at Wyoming, which is probably going to be tough. As we've talked about, you really don't want to play Cincinnati, Wyoming, and then McLean sneaks in with the big win over Hillsborough. They'll play Cincinnati Taft at the 14 seed.
Yeah, so if you look at Fantastic 50, sorry to bang that drum more, but like this is the worst Wyoming team in a long time. Like their scoring differential isn't as great as it typically is. They're actually a little lower seeded or ranked than typical. So maybe, with how kind of up and down Courthouse has been, maybe they can get on the upswing. One thing I've heard from Coach Hoops directly about Urbana was they're very similar to Zane Trace.
7-3.
Yeah, 7-3. They they give up a lot of points to really good teams is like the only thing that they can really say, but they're a very similar attack as Zane Trace. But so he said, it's not the best matchup for them, but it's definitely a matchup that they'll, if they play well, they'll have a chance to bring home a win. Where last year, if you looked at just like overall, like if you looked at the points and stuff, they probably were not going to be favored in that game against Clinton Massey. They're a very slight favorite at home in that one on Fantastic 50. So I think should be a good game for them.
Yeah, with D4, it's not kind of like some of the teams once you look at like D5 and D6 where you have teams in the playoffs like 3-7 or 2-8, right? Dunbar's the 16 seed is 6-3. So one thing I will say about Region 16 specifically is that every area team in that region did end up making it. McLean was the last one out of the 26. McLean, Courthouse, Waverly, and Unioda all make it. So, yeah, it's always nice when we have all our teams make it. Now, it's going to be an uphill battle for a majority of those. And Unioda, like you said, the highest seed, but only a slim favorite over them. And it's going to be tough if they even are able to win in Week 11. And it's going to be tough for any of these teams if they're able to win in Week 11. So, all right, so we'll look to Division 5 now. Ironton, Fairland, and Zane Trace, both with top 4 seeding, so they'll potentially host a playoff game in Week 12 if they'll make it there. Ironton hosts Worthington Christian, Fairland has Portsmouth, and then Zane Trace has Middletown Madison. And then Wheelersburg and West also with home games, however, outside the top 4, so they will not be hosts in Week 12 if they're able to make it there. Wheelersburg hosts Afrocentric. For West, it is Heath. And then a couple other teams outside the top 10. South Point makes the playoffs for the first time in a little while, and then they'll actually be at Barnesville. Portsmouth, we previously talked about, has the 15 seed there at Fairland, and then Westfall slides into the 16 seed after the win over Piketon. They'll have to travel to Valley View.
Yeah, for Westfall, it's kind of a nice welcome back to the playoffs after not being there for quite a long time. Coach Stepp and his staff gets there in year 2. Bryce Wickline's been outstanding for them. Probably should get some all-state consideration for, I believe he's at either 34 or 35 total touchdowns, only 7 interceptions to go along with, I believe it's like 26 passing touchdowns, but he's got some rushing touchdowns. He's around 3,000 total yards between rushing and passing on the year. So he's been outstanding. Trent Walters has been also outstanding for them. 7 interceptions, tied for the SEC lead with Caden Cutright. And he's going to end up being close to 800 yards receiving. It's a very tough hill for them to climb at Valley View, but at the same time, you get back in the playoffs, and that's a big step for the program, moving in the right direction. When you mentioned South Point, they're playing at Barnesville, the Christmas capital of Ohio. That's just those awful colors.
I think you said something about that on the Horizon Football Playoff preview show last year.
Yeah. So, and then and this is what I'm going to say for South Point. Piketon gave them all they wanted last year, and Piketon was one of those teams that got in as like the 14 or 15 seed. So, Barnesville, probably is going to be too much for South Point, but you never know. Line up, give it all you got. And I liked what I saw out of Ethan Hunt a couple weeks ago as a freshman quarterback. Yeah. It's going to be tough for them, but big step in the right direction for them. I believe you mentioned it's been 10 years for them being even 500. Right. So good step in the right direction for them. I think for West, it's good that Heath's got to make that trip down to the west side, but that's going to be a tough matchup for them. Heath's a really good program as well. Wheelersburg just has been rolling. Ends up only being a 7 seed, but Afrocentric, I think, is going to be a little overmatched for them this year. Then they would play a really good Fairland team, and that would be a really fun Week 12 matchup possibility. But for Ironton, the 1 seed, I don't think they played as well down the stretch as they were hoping to, but probably getting healthy, and they're very battle tested as far as the state tournament goes. Zane Trace didn't get the best matchup there as Middletown Madison, another one of those really experienced teams, but I think they've got a good chance to win that game, and
probably not quite as easy as the Clark Montessori game was last year.
Our Kenneth Hale attest to that for sure. But I like our chances to get a few teams moving on. I guarantee we'll get one between Fairland and Portsmouth. And Portsmouth playing really well down the stretch as well. So that could be an interesting rematch for them.
And then in Division 6, not quite as many teams, but we still have a handful. Paint Valley draws the 6th. They'll host in Week 11. They'll play Rockford Parkway. And then Nelsonville, even with the loss to Athens in Week 10, they draw a home game at the 7 seed for Week 11. They'll play Bel Air. Valley sneaks in after the big win over Menford. That probably could have been a game we just strictly talked about, but what a season. I know we did touch on it a little bit in the episode on Monday, but what a season. What a fall sports season it has been for the Valley Indians, who go from not even really having a chance to make the playoffs up to the 13 seed. They'll have to travel to West Liberty Salem. Then Dawson Bryant / Cole Grove, they draw the 13. They go to Northmore, and then Rock Hill slides in at the 16. They'll have to go play Garraway.
The Pirates. Very good program. They're one of those, I guess if you're the Pirates, you're probably going to be a really good small school program. So their Sugar Creek Garraway is really, really good. Like, you'll see them at the state tournament every once in a while for just a variety of sports. So very good. But look up Dawson Bryant to Northmore, because I think that's going to be a...
Should I say Coal Grove, since that's the
Yeah, shut up.
city?
Galilean, then you can say for
Coal Grove to where?
Northmore
Northmore.
with no E on the end.
3 hours.
Yeah. So I thought that
Man,
was
that
good.
is that's way up north. It's more up north.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. Good job. Yeah, so...
That's tough.
Yeah. So now type in Rockford Parkway to Bainbridge, because that ain't close either. Like, I feel like this is the best thing you can listen to or pay attention to on this podcast.
2.5 hours.
Yeah. So here's the thing. This is Rockford Parkway. Let's see what number schedule they play. They play the number 3 schedule in Division 6, 2-8. So, win wise, you feel like Paint Valley is going to have a really good chance to win. Only a 9-point favorite at home against a 2-8 team. They beat North Central, who finished 9-1, 48-27. This is the 11 seed. They're the 11 seed with 2 wins because they beat a team that finished 9-1. Yeah, so Paint Valley doesn't get the easiest matchup for. Oh, you face a 2-win team. They come from the MAC, where there's they win 3 state championships every year, or they play for 3 state championships. Yeah, so not the easiest matchup for Paint Valley, but they get to be at home in the beautiful Painted Valley. Nelsonville, York gets a. You probably won't get this reference, but gets a distinct advantage over Bel Air by playing at night. Bel Air doesn't have lights; they play Saturday afternoons.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. So Westfall, I don't know if it was their first year in the playoffs. In their long run of being in the playoffs, they either played at Ironton first or at Bel Air, but it was just a Saturday afternoon game. It's just that's kind of weird. Valley, like you mentioned, just great story for them on the season. Very uphill battle to go to West Liberty Salem, but at the same time, get an extra week of practice, and obviously that's worked out so far for them. Getting the weeks of practice in, so they're gonna have everybody back next year. They're gonna be feeling good going into the off season. And although I'm not sure there's much of an off season there, because they get pretty much their best athletes out playing all the time, all their sports. So, good for Coach Crabtree and the Indians to get back in the playoffs.
The mini Coach Crabtree
Yes.
in the Southern Ohio area.
Yes.
So moving on to Division 7, Eastern Pike. That is the brown and orange Eastern.
Yes.
Actually, the top 2 seeds are both Easterns, as the other one was Eastern Reedsville, who, if you haven't had a chance to see them, go check out our Week 4 live stream when they took on Notre Dame at the historic Spartan Municipal Stadium. But Eastern Pike goes 10-0. They win the SOC 1. Congratulations, you get to play Shady Side, who has traditionally been a pretty solid program, down a bit this year, down at the 15 seed. But Eastern guaranteed 2 home playoff games if they can advance to Week 12. Team we just mentioned, Notre Dame, also draws a home game, at least for the first week. They'll take on Bealsville. And then South Gallia, another team from... Is that not how you say it?
No, you got it. But I got a funny one for you here in a second.
Okay. South Gallia makes the playoffs, also out of the SOC 1. Actually, all of these schools are out of the SOC 1. Souderville East is the other one. South Gallia draws the 9 seed. They have to go to Monroe Central, and then Souderville East draws the 13 there at Fairfield Christian Academy.
So 2010, Shady Side played in the Division 6 state championship game. I laughed at the final score. I want you to guess what the final score was.
Okay, one more time.
Division 6 state championship game.
Yeah.
They lost, clearly.
Shady Side?
Shady Side to St. John's. So it's Delphos St. John's. I just want you to guess what the final score is, because once again, I laughed at it. So you have to remember that it's a funny score. Not like I'm an idiot funny, but like ridiculous.
69-3.
It's actually pretty close. 77-6.
Jeez.
Pre running clock. That may have been why the running clock got put in. But yeah, so they've made it to a state championship game. Yeah, they got destroyed, but they still made it to a state championship game in the last 15 years. So Shady Side over the last 15 seasons, 127-53, routinely making it to the playoffs. So just 2 years ago, they made it to the regional semis. Went 13-2. So actually, that would have been, or not, 2 years ago was with only 8 teams in, so they would have made it to the regional final that year. But yeah, Shady Side, Eastern only a 9-point favorite there. Did you type in Shady Side to Eastern?
I did not.
Yeah, that'd be a fun one. Shady Side plays a really good schedule.
3 hours.
3 hours, yeah. So they got to come 3 hours. I just love playoff football. It makes so much sense to.
Yeah, it seems like
it makes sense for these regions to be as spread out as they were.
It seems like the smaller divisions are the ones that have the longer track. Like, it seems like D3 and 4, you really don't have.
Okay, type in Gallipolis to Salina, because that was that could have happened a few years ago.
311.
Yeah. So,
It's ridiculous.
yeah, I think they were probably excited. Gallipolis was probably, or Gallia Academy was probably excited when like Unio jumped up a level and moved them out into the other side. But yeah, there's some ridiculous travel. So hopefully Eastern can get a win there. Notre Dame with Bealsville, they're actually favored much larger. They're actually a 34-point favorite in that game. Let's check on the East. East is a 15-point dog. South Gallia is a 24-point dog. I think Monroe Central is kind of a sneaky school. Sometimes they have really good teams.
So that's an 8-9 game.
Yeah. So, but you never know. Get to go play in the playoffs.
Absolutely. So we'll jump now to just 2 of our game previews for Week 11. Both of these are games where we have 2 area teams, and they could be decent games. The first one, Portsmouth at Fairland. Now, if I remember correctly, I think Portsmouth was actually winning this game during the regular season, 19-17 at halftime or something to that effect. Now, they end up dropping to Fairland. I think the final was like 43-27. Yeah, it was a big game for Peyton Jackson. He's 20 of 27 for 341 and 4 passing touchdowns. So a big game for the senior through the air. Of those, Bryce Hunt had 7 catches for 124 yards. He had 2 of the passing touchdowns, and then Keegan Smith had 3 for 113 and a touchdown. And they also had another kid, Collins, had 2 catches for 40 yards and a touchdown. So pretty big game through the air for them, but it's hard to beat a team twice. So we'll see what happens. This one is at Fairland. I think the other one was it was at Fairland too. Yeah. So and that game was week 9, I believe. Week 8. So it'll be their second time playing in 4 weeks. OVC match in week 11. So I think it's always interesting when you have 2 teams, not only just 2 area teams playing, but playing for the second time in one season.
Yeah, and I think Portsmouth is a team that if they can really get ahead of you, like maybe by 2 scores, they're going to be really hard to come back on because they play good defense. Obviously, giving up 43 points in that game is, not ideal. But I mean, they only lost 21-6 to Ironton.
Yeah, that was impressive.
Yeah, so it feels like they're getting healthy. They're another team that I think was, they're probably a year ahead of schedule. So, for Portsmouth, just kind of put your chips out on the table and go battle. For Fairland, they have bigger aspirations. They made it to a regional final a couple of seasons ago. So this is a team that has had some playoff success. They lost in the first round last year, but going back a couple of years, they've made some runs, especially that COVID year. And, they're a program that has slowly been on the rise over the past, going back to 2016, they were 3-7, then 6-4, 6-5, 6-4, 8-2, 10-2, 7-4, and this year's 9-1 season. So Fairland has slowly gotten better throughout the years, and I see them as probably the prohibitive favorite here, but you never know. Especially when you get a rematch, it's not like it's going to be the first time you see somebody. And for the Dragons, they have to make sure they take care of business at home in that game if they want to get a Week 12 matchup with possibly Wheelersburg.
Mm-hmm. And then just one other game. It looks like that'll be our game that we're going to live stream this week. It is Vinton County at Gallia, the first TVC title for Vinton County since I think it was 1999, so it's been a little while since they've been atop of the league. And then Gallia finishes technically third in the OVC with the losses to Fairland and Ironton. But a pretty decent showing against Ironton in Week 10 for Gallia.
Yeah, it seems like their defense has really picked up since that Fairland game.
I think it was Week 9, actually.
Yeah, it was Week 9. Meeting. Yeah, so Dawson Bryant, they beat 28-12. Beat Rock Hill 44-7. Then the Ironton game was 27-17. So that's a good competitive matchup there. And then they shut out South Point 28-0. So they've been playing excellent defense. They're actually pretty heavy favorites in this game, 17 points. But here's the thing, and I've gone over it before, and I'm going to do it again. Vinton County hasn't given up more than 21 points. That was Week 1. Then they gave up 8, 6, 0, 13, 0, 0, 12, 7, 0. If you're going to be a 17-point favorite over a team that doesn't give up points, you're going to have to really play well. And, this Vinton County team, they will turn you over and they will make you pay for it as soon as they do. It's the best team they've had in quite some time. For the Vikings, they are a very confident team, pretty nasty defensively. They've just really taken care of business throughout the year. And if you look at the Fantastic 50, they are a cover machine, as they have covered.
Great teams cover.
Yeah, they have covered in 9 of their 10 games. Even in their loss to Unio, they covered. They were supposed to be a 10-point underdog, and they ended up only losing that one by a point. But, so they don't give up points. They're a run-first team where Gallia will get the ball out a little bit more, so it'll be a nice contrasting styles in that. But, Uniota, one of the more dynamic offenses in the area, only scored 3 touchdowns against them, and one was with an extraordinarily short field. In fact, the shortest field you could have, which was a fumble recovered at the 1-yard line. So I think this will be definitely an interesting matchup for sure, and I'm glad that we're going to get to be a part of it. Thank you to Gallia in advance for allowing us to be a part of it. Our sponsors as well, obviously McDonald's, but Ohio Health and our other streaming sponsors.
Yep, make everything we do here, especially on the live stream side of things, possible. All right, what do you say we wrap up the regular season with our power rankings? Then you head east.
One last time.
Don't move.
Yes. You'll move out of the studio to go watch some football. But so power rankings, after Week 10, this is probably going to be it for us as we go into the playoffs and this kind of things break down from there. But for me, number 1 at the beginning of the year, number 1 in my heart, the Ironton Fighting Tigers. I think they have an excellent chance to make a run to the state once again. I think they're probably the favorite, maybe not a heavy favorite as they have been in the past, but I do think they will be a slight favorite to get out. So they're my number 1 team. Number 2, I have Jackson. Just been dominant the last number of weeks, really, since that Ironton game. Really impressive season for them, and I think they've really, they're in such a tough regional, but I think they've got a chance to make some noise as, Bishop Watterson, who looked like they were just kind of the most dominant team out of there, actually dropped a game in Week 10 to not the best DeSales team that DeSales has had in quite some time. So, you never know. I got Wheelersburg at number 3. I've been really impressed with them, especially since they got an SOC to play. Logan Elm, I kept at 4. Man, I wanted to jump them, but I feel like what Wheelersburg's been able to do is kind of keeping them there, but I understand if you would jump them back in because that was an extraordinarily impressive win for Logan Elm. So I have them at 4. I have Fairland at number 5. Only one loss. It was a substantial loss to Ironton, but they beat Gallia. They beat West. They beat some really good teams. On their schedule. I got Uniota at 6 is the highest I've had them this year. They've been really impressive throughout the year. It seems like they're a very complete football team at this point. They've got a tough, just tougher region to go into, but it's been really exciting to see the progress that program has made since back in the day when they were on Fantastic 50. The first year of Fantastic 50, they were one of the worst teams in the state, and now they are
second in the region.
Yeah, second in the region, and that's something that wouldn't have expected even 5 years ago. Right. I got Gallia Academy at number 7, West at number 8. Both dropped down one spot for the week, and then I got Benton County at number 9 and Eastern rounding out my top 10.
Yep. So I changed mine, so I have the exact same as you.
Nice.
So originally I had Gallia at 8 and West at 7, but just when we were talking about the loss to Ironton for Gallia, it was almost addition by subtraction.
Yeah.
Where it's like, yeah, they lost, but they looked pretty good doing it. Mm-hmm. So I bumped them up. Well, I didn't bump them up. I think I left them at 7, then I took West down to 8. So just Ironton, Jackson, Wheelersburg, Logan Elm, Fairland, Uniota, Gallia, West, Vinton County, and Eastern is. So we start off different. We end exactly the same. Yeah. I know we were slightly different there for a second, but I don't know. I like Gallia a little more than West in terms of like power rankings right now. So nice way to end the season. Right on time. Same mindset. Yeah.
Yeah. So should be fun to see the playoffs. We'll talk about them next week. I'm excited to follow district play from somewhere over east. I don't know where I'm going to be, depending on the day.
Somewhere.
Yeah. I don't know. Gotta do what I can while I still have some sanity.
And like mobility in your back, cripple.
It was bad. It was bad last night. So got that whole solid hour of sleep before driving 7 hours. So this is what you want.
All right. Well, unless you have anything extra to add, let's head to the playoffs and get out of here.
Yeah. Let's good luck to all teams this week. Let's have some fun.
All right. Well, that'll do it for today's episode of SOSA Overtime, presented by McDonald's.